Ambassador Zethkri sat in his crystal chair, looking at the reports on his desk with boredom. The same old boring stuff every day. Trade numbers, colony reports, and complaints from smaller species about this or that. Nothing interesting ever happened in his job anymore. The Galactic Council had been running things for over 3,000 years. 12 old and powerful species made all the important decisions for everyone else in the galaxy. They had the best technology, the biggest ships, and control over all the major trade routes. If any young species got too big for their boots, the Council would simply stop trading with them. Without Council technology and resources, most species would collapse within months. Zethkri picked up another report and sighed. This one was about humans. Again. He had been getting reports about these primitive creatures for 50 years now, ever since they figured out how to travel faster than light. The Council had hoped they would be useful, maybe good at mining or farming. Instead, humans had proven to be stubborn and difficult to control. The report said humans had been busy building new colonies. Lots of them. They were spreading out into star systems that nobody else wanted. Dead systems with dying stars. Systems with dangerous radiation or unstable planets. Systems so far out on the edge of the galaxy that it would take months just to get there. Stupid humans, Zethkri muttered to himself. They take the worst systems and somehow think they can make them work. He read more of the report. Human colonies were growing fast. They had built mining stations around dead planets and farms on worlds that other species said were impossible to live on. They were even building big factories in empty space using asteroids for raw materials. The Council's experts said humans were desperate. They were a young species with a small population, so they had to take whatever systems they could get. The experts predicted humans would fail within 100 years. Maybe sooner if they ran out of resources. Zethkri was about to put the report away when something caught his eye. Humans had been asking strange questions during their rare visits to Council space. Questions about hyperspace navigation that made no sense. Questions about energy shield technology that was way beyond their understanding. Questions about gravitational fields that even Council scientists found confusing. Probably just trying to look smarter than they are, Zethkri thought. He had seen this before with young species. They would ask complicated questions to impress the Council, hoping to get better trade deals or access to advanced technology. A soft chime filled his office. His assistant's voice came through the communication system. Ambassador, Counselor Nexus Prime wants to speak with you. Zethkri straightened up in his chair. Nexus Prime was the leader of the Crystalline Collective, one of the most powerful species in the Council. When Nexus Prime wanted to talk, it was usually about something important. The wall screen activated, showing Nexus Prime's crystalline form. The crystalline beings looked like living rocks, but they were incredibly intelligent and had technology that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. Zethkri, Nexus Prime's voice was like the sound of grinding stone. We need to discuss the human problem. Problem? Zethkri was confused. The humans are hardly a problem. They are weak and scattered across worthless systems. That is what troubles me, Nexus Prime replied. Intelligence reports say humans have established over 200 colonies in the past 10 years. That is faster expansion than any species in recorded history. Zethkri looked at his reports again. The numbers were there, but he had not really thought about what they meant. 200 colonies was indeed very fast for such a small species. Perhaps they are just desperate, Zethkri suggested, taking any system they can find before other species claim them. Perhaps, Nexus Prime said, but he did not sound convinced. Or perhaps they are planning something. Our patrol ships report strange energy readings from human space. Our traders say human technology is advancing faster than our experts predicted. Zethkri felt a small chill. The Council's experts were never wrong about technology development. They had been studying galactic civilizations for thousands of years. What do you suggest we do? Zethkri asked. We remind them of their place, Nexus Prime said firmly. The Council has decided to impose new trade restrictions on humanity. We will also claim several of their newer colonies as Council protectorates. This will slow their expansion and teach them proper respect. Zethkri nodded. This was standard procedure. When young species got too confident, the Council would apply pressure until they became more cooperative. It worked every time. I will send the notification to human leadership immediately, Zethkri said. Good. Make sure they understand this is not a request. The communication ended. leaving Zethkri alone with his thoughts. He began typing the official message to humanity. It was a standard diplomatic document that he had sent to dozens of species over the years. Trade restrictions would begin immediately. Several human colonies would now be under Council protection and control. Human ships would need special permits to travel through Council space. The message was firm but not threatening. The Council always gave young species a chance to cooperate before using stronger measures. Most species accepted these terms quickly, grateful that the Council was willing to guide them. Zethkri sent the message and went back to his other work. He expected a reply within a few days. Probably some complaints and requests for negotiation, maybe some angry words from human leaders. Nothing unusual. 3 days later, the reply came. It was much shorter than Zethkri had expected. Only 2 sentences. Humanity formally withdraws from all Galactic Council treaties and trade agreements. Effective immediately. Zethkri read the message 3 times. He could not believe what he was seeing. No species had ever withdrawn from Council agreements. It was unthinkable. The Council controlled everything important in the galaxy. Without Council trade and technology, any species would collapse within months. He immediately sent a message to Nexus Prime, forwarding the human reply. The response came back within minutes. Send them another message. Explain the consequences of their decision. They do not understand what they are doing. Zethkri sent a longer message to humanity, explaining all the benefits of Council membership. He listed all the terrible things that would happen to species that tried to survive outside the Council system. He offered generous terms if humans would reconsider their decision. The human reply came back the same day. Even shorter this time, message received and understood. Decision stands. For the first time in his long career, Zethkri felt confused. No species behaved this way. Humans were supposed to be primitive and desperate. They needed Council technology and trade more than anyone. Why were they acting like they could survive on their own? He looked at his reports again, reading them more carefully this time. Human colonies in worthless systems, strange questions about advanced technology, rapid expansion into areas no one else wanted. A terrible thought began to form in Zethkri's mind. What if the humans were not desperate? What if they had been planning this for years? What if their expansion into worthless systems had been part of some larger strategy? He shook his head, trying to dismiss such thoughts. Humans were young and primitive. The Council's experts had said so. They could not possibly be clever enough to plan something the Council had not foreseen, but the doubt remained. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had told the Galactic Council no, and somehow Zethkri had the feeling that this was only the beginning. Councilor Nexus Prime stood before the emergency council session, his crystalline body reflecting the lights of the Great Chamber. Representatives from all 12 Council species were present, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes around the circular room. The human situation has become intolerable, Nexus Prime announced. His voice echoed through the chamber like stones grinding against each other. They have rejected our guidance and withdrawn from all agreements. This cannot be allowed to continue. Ambassador Sekvar of the Krathan Empire rose from his seat. The Krathan were a warrior species, tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. With respect, Counselor, why do we care what humans do? They are weak and far away. Let them starve in their worthless systems. Because other young species are watching, replied Counselor Vextha of the Flowing Minds. Her liquid form shifted colors as she spoke. If humans can defy the Council without consequences, others might try the same thing. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. The Council's power came from fear and respect. If even one species could successfully ignore them, it would encourage others to rebel. What do you suggest? Asked Counselor Grimtalk, whose mechanical voice came from speakers built into his robotic body. A demonstration, Nexus Prime said simply. We send a fleet to human space not to destroy them but to show them the consequences of their foolishness. A few occupied space stations, some arrested leaders, and they will beg to rejoin our agreements. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, Fleet Commander Darthul was preparing his ships for departure. The fleet consisted of 3 massive dreadnoughts and 20 escort vessels. Each dreadnought was over 2 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Darthul had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. He had put down rebellions, ended civil wars, and enforced council law across the galaxy. In all that time, he had never lost a single ship to enemy action. His reputation alone was usually enough to make troublemakers surrender. The journey to human space took 6 days through hyperspace. Darthul's fleet emerged near a human trading post called Station 7. Intelligence reports said it was one of humanity's largest civilian installations, with over 50,000 people living and working there. Perfect target, Darthul thought to himself. Capture the station, arrest the leaders, and humans everywhere will see what happens when you defy the council. He opened a communication channel to the station. This is Fleet Commander Darthul of the Galactic Council. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. The reply came back quickly, spoken by a human female with a calm voice. This is Station Commander Sarah Chen. You are not welcome in human space. Leave immediately or face the consequences. Darthul almost laughed. The station had no weapons larger than point defense guns. His smallest escort ship could destroy it single-handedly. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. I will give you one more chance, Darthul said. Surrender now, or we will take the station by force. Your choice, came the reply. Chen out. Darthul ordered his fleet to attack positions. The 3 dreadnoughts moved forward while the escort ships spread out to surround the station. It should have been over in minutes. That was when everything went wrong. The first sign of trouble was Darthul's navigation officer screaming about impossible readings. Sir, ships coming out of hyperspace, but the vectors are all wrong. They are coming from directions that should not exist. Darthul looked at his screens and felt his blood turn cold. Dozens of human ships were appearing around his fleet. Small ships, nothing larger than a frigate. But they were moving in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace inside his formation. Others appeared, above and below his fleet, attacking from angles that should have been impossible. Some seemed to come from hyperspace routes that his computers insisted did not exist. All ships, defensive positions, Darthul shouted. Return fire. But the human ships were already attacking. Instead of energy weapons, they used kinetic projectiles that punched through his shields like they were not even there. Solid metal rounds traveling at incredible speeds tore through armor that was supposed to stop anything. One of his escort ships exploded as a human frigate rammed it at full speed. The frigate died too, but it had taken out a ship 3 times its size. Who fights like that? Who throws away their own ships just to damage the enemy? Sir, gravitational mines, his sensor officer reported. The humans have seeded the area with gravity weapons. Space around Darthul's fleet began to twist and bend. Invisible forces grabbed his ships and pulled them off course. One of his dreadnoughts was caught between 2 gravity fields and torn apart like paper. The human attack was unlike anything Darthul had ever seen. No formation flying. No elegant maneuvers. No attempts to disable or capture. The humans fought like wild animals, throwing themselves at his ships with no regard for their own safety. A group of human fighters used their own ships as missiles, ramming his second dreadnought's bridge. The massive ship spun out of control and crashed into 2 escort vessels. All 3 ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. Retreat, Darthul ordered. All ships retreat immediately. But there was nowhere to run. The humans had somehow surrounded his entire fleet. Every time one of his ships tried to escape, human vessels appeared to block their path. It was like the humans knew exactly where his ships would go before he gave the orders. His communication officer was dead. His navigation officer was trying to stop the bleeding from a head wound. Half his bridge crew was unconscious or worse. Warning lights flashed everywhere as his ship's systems failed one by one. A human voice came over the emergency channel. The same calm female voice from the station. Commander Darthul, this is Admiral Chen. Surrender immediately, and you will be allowed to leave in escape pods. Admiral? Darthul was confused. The woman on the station had called herself Station Commander. How could she be an admiral? You have 30 seconds to abandon ship, Chen's voice continued. After that, we will assume you prefer to die with your vessel. Darthul looked around his burning bridge. His fleet was gone. 23 ships destroyed in less than 2 hours. Only his flagship remained, and it was dying fast. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered. The escape pods launched just in time. Darthul's dreadnought exploded moments later, torn apart by another gravity mine. He watched from his tiny pod as human ships moved through the wreckage, making sure nothing survived. Only one escape pod made it out of the battle area. Navigation Officer Krelta, a young Veltar who had never seen real combat before. The humans let him go, apparently on purpose. When rescue ships found Krelta 3 days later, he was babbling about humans who fought like demons, about ships that came from impossible directions, and weapons that tore reality apart, about enemies who would rather die than retreat. But the most terrifying part of his report was the recording he had made. Every council ship in the galaxy received the same transmission a few hours later. It showed the entire battle, recorded from human cameras, the destruction of the council fleet in perfect detail. The transmission ended with Admiral Chen speaking directly to the camera. She was a small woman with short dark hair and calm eyes. She looked very ordinary, very human, but her words sent fear through every council leader in the galaxy. "The Galactic Council is no longer welcome in human space. We have withdrawn from all your treaties and agreements. Any council ships found in our territory will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The recording ended there. But everyone who watched it understood the real message. The humans had not just won a battle, they had sent a clear signal to the entire galaxy. The age of council dominance was over. The emergency council session lasted for 18 hours. Every representative was shouting. Some demanded immediate revenge against humanity. Others wanted to open negotiations. A few even suggested giving humans what they wanted and hoping the problem would go away. Nexus Prime finally restored order by threatening to cut off trade with any species that continued arguing. When the chamber was quiet, he spoke in his grinding stone voice. "The humans have destroyed a council fleet, 23 ships and over 15,000 personnel. This cannot be ignored." Admiral Sekvar stood up, his black armor gleaming under the chamber lights. "Then we crush them completely. No half measures this time. Give me 800 ships and I will turn every human world into a burned wasteland." 800 ships? Councillor Vextha's liquid form rippled with concern. "That is larger than any fleet we have ever assembled." "Good," Sekvar replied. "The humans want to fight? Then we will give them a war they will never forget. We will attack their homeworld directly. Once Earth falls, the rest of their colonies will surrender immediately." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Council had never lost a major battle in 3,000 years. They could not allow one defeat by primitives to go unanswered. The vote was close, but Sekvar got his fleet. Ships were recalled from across the galaxy. The greatest military force in galactic history began assembling at the Council's main naval base, 800 ships. 60 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers, and 540 escort vessels. Every major species contributed their best warships and most experienced crews. The fleet was so large it took a week just to organize the formations. Sekvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory. Around him, hundreds of other ships waited for the order to jump to hyperspace. Never in galactic history had so much firepower been assembled in one place. "All ships report. Ready?" his communications officer announced. "Then let us end this human problem once and for all," Sekvar said. "All ships jump." The journey to Earth would take 12 days through hyperspace. Sekvar spent the time studying intelligence reports about human defenses. What he read made him confident of victory. Earth had orbital stations and a few hundred defense platforms. The humans had perhaps 50 warships defending their homeworld. Even if every human in the galaxy rushed to defend Earth, they could not match the firepower of 800 council vessels. But Sekvar was a careful commander. He decided to advance slowly through human space, destroying military installations along the way. This would prevent humans from gathering their forces and would show the galaxy that the Council could not be defied. The fleet's first target was a system called New Berlin. Intelligence said it had mining stations and a small military base. Easy prey for such a massive force. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find a few frightened humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found something that should have been impossible. Every human in the system was gone. The mining stations were empty. The military base was abandoned. But the stations had not been destroyed. They had been converted into something else. What are those things? Sekvar demanded, staring at his scanner readings. His science officer looked terrified. Sir, the stations appear to have been turned into weapons platforms. Massive ones. And, sir, they are all pointed at us. The human stations opened fire before Sekvar could give orders. Huge energy beams and missile swarms erupted from what had been civilian installations. The humans had somehow turned their entire system into a giant weapon. 12 council ships died in the first minute. The weapons were unlike anything in council databases. Energy beams that cut through the strongest armor. Missiles that split into dozens of smaller warheads. Gravity weapons that crushed ships like empty cans. Return fire, Sekvar ordered. Destroy those stations. But destroying the stations did not stop the attack. As soon as the council fleet began advancing, more weapons activated. Asteroids that had been floating peacefully suddenly accelerated to incredible speeds, slamming into council ships like massive bullets. Space itself seemed to be full of hidden traps. Invisible mines exploded when ships got too close. Energy fields appeared from nowhere, frying electronics and killing crew members. The humans had turned empty space into a maze of death. And then the human ships arrived. They came from hyperspace routes that Sekvar's navigation computers said were impossible. They appeared behind his fleet, above it, below it, and sometimes right in the middle of his formations. Small ships mostly. But they fought with the same savage intensity his scouts had reported. The humans did not try to win elegant space battles. They fought like predators hunting prey. They would appear suddenly, destroy 1 or 2 council ships, and vanish back into hyperspace before anyone could react. Sir, his communications officer shouted. We are receiving a transmission from the human forces. The main screen activated, showing a human male in military uniform. He was older than the woman from the previous battle, with gray hair and tired eyes, but he spoke with the same calm confidence. I am General Marcus Webb, commander of human forces in this system. You are trespassing in human space. Leave immediately or be destroyed. Sekvar activated his own transmission. I am Admiral Sekvar of the Krathan Empire. You are outnumbered 800 to 1. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. The human general smiled. It was not a nice smile. Admiral, you seem to think this is a fair fight. Let me correct that misunderstanding. The transmission ended. A moment later, Sekvar's entire fleet was under attack from every direction at once. Human ships poured out of hyperspace like angry insects. Not just the few dozen his scouts had reported, but hundreds of them. Small ships, yes, but there were so many of them that they darkened space around his fleet. But the worst part was not the ships, it was how they fought. Human pilots rammed their vessels into council ships without hesitation. They used their own vessels as bombs, sacrificing themselves to take out larger targets. They attacked in swarms, dozens of small ships focusing on single council vessels until they were overwhelmed. And the weapons. Dear gods, the weapons. The humans had missiles that burrowed through armor like living things. Energy beams that seemed to seek out the most vulnerable parts of enemy ships. Projectile weapons that fired chunks of metal at speeds that turned them into devastating impacts. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Sekvar's mighty fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships trying desperately to escape. Over 200 council vessels were gone. Hundreds of thousands of crew members were dead or missing. Sekvar himself barely escaped in a damaged cruiser with only 30 ships remaining from his original formation. As his battered fleet limped away from the human system, he received another transmission. General Webb appeared on screen again, standing in what looked like a command center. Behind him, Sekvar could see displays showing the locations of every surviving council ship. Admiral Sekvar, the general said politely, you are leaving human space. That is wise, but I want you to understand something important. The general paused, looking directly into the camera. This was just one system. We have 200 more just like it. Every human colony you think you can attack has been turned into a fortress. Every space route you think you control has been mapped and trapped. Webb's expression became deadly serious. You came here with 800 ships thinking you could intimidate us. We destroyed most of your fleet without using even half of our available forces. Do you understand what that means? Sekvar understood. The humans had been preparing for this war for years, maybe decades. Every colony they had built in worthless systems had been a military installation in disguise. Every trade mission had been a scouting expedition.
Every diplomatic meeting had been gathering intelligence. The Galactic Council has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years, Webb continued.
That ends now. You can adapt to the new reality, or you can be destroyed by it. The choice is yours. The transmission ended, leaving Sekvar alone with his thoughts and his fears. For the first time in his military career, he had been completely outfought by an enemy he had underestimated. But the worst part was the message the humans had sent. They were not just defending themselves. They were hunting the Council across the galaxy, and from what Sekvar had seen, they were very good at it. The war had only just begun, and the Council was already losing. The Council's greatest fortress was a planet called Nexus Core. It had been the center of galactic government for over 2,000 years. Massive orbital stations surrounded the planet like metal moons. Defense platforms numbered in the thousands. The system's natural asteroid belt had been converted into an endless maze of weapons and sensors. Nexus Prime stood in his private chamber, looking out at the defensive preparations. After the disaster at New Berlin, every Council species had rushed to protect their most important worlds. Nexus Core now had more firepower concentrated around it than any system in galactic history. They cannot touch us here, Nexus Prime told himself. But he no longer felt as confident as his words suggested. The humans had not tried to attack any major Council worlds yet. Instead, they had begun doing something much worse. They were hunting. Human fleets appeared without warning at trade stations and supply depots. They would destroy everything of value and disappear before help could arrive. Commercial ships traveling between Council worlds simply vanished. Trade routes that had been safe for thousands of years became death traps, but the humans did not just attack randomly. They seemed to understand exactly how the Council economy worked, and they were taking it apart piece by piece. Counselor, his assistant's voice came through the communication system. Trade Minister Kolvex is here to see you. Send him in. Trade Minister Kolvex was a flowing mind, his liquid body constantly shifting between blue and purple colors. The colors showed his emotional state, and right now he was deep purple with fear. Counselor, we have a serious problem, Kolvex said without ceremony. Human attacks on our trade network have increased by 300% in the past month. How is that possible? Nexus Prime asked. Our intelligence says humans only have a few hundred ships. That is what makes this so terrifying, Kolvex replied. They are not using large fleets. Small groups of human ships are hitting dozens of targets simultaneously. It is like they can be everywhere at once. Kolvex activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked recent human attacks. There were hundreds of them scattered across Council space. Look at the pattern, Kolvex said. They are not attacking randomly. Every target is carefully chosen. They hit the food supply lines for Veltar colonies. They destroyed the energy distribution network for Krathan military bases. They contaminated the water processing facilities that serve crystalline settlements. Nexus Prime studied the display with growing horror. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were systematically destroying the infrastructure that held Council civilization together. It gets worse, Kolvex continued. Younger species are declaring independence from Council authority. The Zephyrians broke their trade agreements yesterday. The Mineral Collective has stopped shipping raw materials to Council worlds. Even some of our older allies are questioning whether we can protect them. How many species have rebelled? Nexus Prime asked. 47 so far, and more are considering it every day. Nexus Prime felt his crystalline body grow cold. The Council's power had always depended on keeping hundreds of smaller species under control. If they started breaking away, the entire galactic order would collapse. What do our military advisors say? That is the worst part, Kolvex said, his colors shifting to deep purple. The humans are providing military aid to rebel species. Not just weapons, but training and tactical support. They are teaching these species how to fight us. A new report appeared on the display. The Singing Crystals, a species that had been under Council control for 800 years, had just destroyed a Council patrol fleet using human-designed weapons and tactics. They are creating an army out of our former subjects, Nexus Prime realized. Every species that joins them makes us weaker, and them stronger. Counselor, his assistant's voice interrupted again. Emergency message from the Veltar home system. They are under attack. Nexus Prime and Colvex rushed to the main command center. The huge room was filled with communication officers and military analysts, all trying to coordinate the Council's response to the growing crisis. Ambassador Zethkri was at the main console, his face pale with fear. Counselor, the human attack on Veltar Prime is unlike anything we have seen before. The main screen showed a tactical display of the Veltar system. Instead of the usual small human raids, this was a massive assault. Hundreds of ships were attacking simultaneously from multiple directions. But these are not just human ships, Zethkri continued. The attack includes vessels from at least 20 different species, all the ones that have declared independence from Council authority. Nexus Prime watched in shock as the combined fleet tore through Veltar defenses. The rebel ships fought with human tactics, no elegant formations, no attempts to minimize casualties. They simply overwhelmed their targets with brutal efficiency. Sir, one of the communication officers called out, we are receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Similar attacks are happening at Krathen military bases, flowing mind research stations, and mechanical collective manufacturing centers. How many systems are under attack? Nexus Prime demanded. 17 confirmed, sir. More reports coming in every minute. The command center erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across Council space. It was not just one attack or even several. It was a coordinated assault on dozens of Council worlds simultaneously. This is impossible, Nexus Prime said. Even if humans had convinced every rebel species to join them, they could not coordinate attacks across such distances. The communication delays alone would make it impossible. But even as he spoke, Nexus Prime realized what was happening. The humans had not just been building military forces in those worthless systems. They had been building a communication network that could coordinate actions across the entire galaxy in real time. Counselor, Zethkri said quietly, I am receiving a priority transmission. It is addressed to all Council leaders. Put it on the main screen. The tactical display disappeared, replaced by the image of a human woman. Nexus Prime recognized her from intelligence reports, Admiral Sarah Chen, the human who had destroyed the first Council fleet. Leaders of the Galactic Council, Chen said in her calm, professional voice. I am Admiral Chen, Supreme Commander of the Human Liberation Forces. Liberation Forces? Nexus Prime did not like the sound of that. For 3,000 years, Yuri, Council has controlled this galaxy through fear and economic manipulation. Chen continued. You have kept hundreds of species in poverty while enriching yourselves. You have prevented technological progress that might threaten your power. You have treated entire civilizations as resources to be exploited. Chen paused, looking directly into the camera. That ends today. Over the past 2 years, humanity has formed alliances with every species that desires freedom from Council rule. Together, we have built a new galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. The screen changed to show a map of the galaxy. Huge sections were now colored in blue, representing systems under human control or allied with humanity. Only a small core of systems remained red, still under Council authority. As you can see, the balance of power has shifted, Chen continued. The majority of galactic civilization now stands against Council tyranny. Your military forces are scattered and demoralized. Your trade networks are broken. Your subject species have abandoned you. Chen's expression became deadly serious. You have 2 choices. You can surrender now and accept integration into the new galactic order as equals, or you can continue fighting and be completely destroyed. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, we will assume you have chosen destruction. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Nexus Prime looked at the galaxy map still displayed on the screen. In just 2 years, humans had somehow convinced most of the galaxy to join them against the Council. The Council, which had ruled for 3 millennia, controlled only a handful of core systems. How did this happen? He asked no one in particular. Trade Minister Kolvex answered anyway, his colors now completely purple with despair. We thought humans were primitive and desperate. We were wrong. They are the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. Because they are good fighters? No, Kolvex said sadly. Because they understand something we never learned. They know how to make friends. Ambassador Zethkri had never felt so small and helpless. He stood in the docking bay of the human ship Prometheus, waiting to meet with Admiral Chen. The ship was enormous, larger than most space stations, but it felt different from Council vessels. Where Council ships were designed to impress and intimidate, this human vessel was built purely for war. The walls were covered with weapons. The corridors were wide enough to move troops and equipment quickly. Everything looked functional and deadly. Even the light seemed brighter and harsher than what Zethkri was used to. 2 years had passed since Admiral Chen's ultimatum. The Council had chosen to keep fighting, and it had been a disaster. One by one, Council worlds had fallen to human-led coalitions. Species that had been loyal for centuries turned against their former masters. The great galactic civilization that had lasted 3,000 years was crumbling away. Only 6 Council worlds remained independent. Nexus Core and 5 other fortress systems, surrounded by enemies and cut off from each other. The proud Council fleet was reduced to a few hundred ships hiding behind massive defensive installations. The Council had finally voted to seek peace, and they had chosen Zethkri to negotiate with the humans. It was probably a death sentence, but he had volunteered anyway. Someone had to try to save what was left of their civilization. Ambassador Zethkri, a human soldier, approached him. The soldier was young and professional, showing no particular hostility or fear. Admiral Chen will see you now. Zethkri followed the soldier through corridors filled with activity. Human crew members worked alongside beings from dozens of different species. He saw Zephyrians operating computer systems, Mineral Collective members maintaining equipment, and even some Veltar serving as communication officers. It was strange to see so many different species working together so easily. In Council space, different species were kept separate to prevent them from forming alliances against their rulers. But here everyone seemed to be part of the same team. The Admiral's office was surprisingly simple. A desk, some chairs, and walls covered with displays showing the current state of the galaxy. Admiral Chen stood with her back to the door, studying a tactical map. Ambassador Zethkri, she said without turning around. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Zethkri sat down carefully in a chair that had been designed for his species. Even this small gesture surprised him. Council leaders never bothered to make alien visitors comfortable. Admiral Chen turned around and sat behind her desk. She was smaller than Zethkri had expected, and she looked tired. The past 2 years of war had clearly taken their toll on her. I understand you are here to discuss surrender terms, Chen said directly. Not surrender, Zethkri said quickly. A negotiated peace. An end to hostilities that preserves some dignity for both sides. Chen smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. Ambassador, let me show you something. She activated a holographic display that filled the room. It showed the current state of the galaxy in perfect detail. The 6 remaining Council systems glowed red, tiny islands in a sea of blue that represented human-allied territory. Your Council controls less than 1% of inhabited systems, Chen said. Your economy has collapsed. Your military is trapped in defensive positions. Over 400 species have joined our alliance. What exactly do you think you can negotiate from this position? Zethkri looked at the display and felt his heart sink. The numbers were even worse than he had feared. The Council was not just losing the war, they had already lost it. What do you want from us? He asked quietly. Complete surrender, Chen replied immediately. Dissolution of the Galactic Council. Integration of your remaining systems into the new Galactic Federation. War crimes trials for Council leaders who ordered attacks on civilian targets. And our people, our civilizations? Chen's expression softened slightly. Will be welcomed as equals in the new galactic community. We are not interested in revenge, Ambassador. We want to build something better. Zethkri was confused. I do not understand. You have won completely. You could demand anything. Why offer mercy to your enemies? Because you are not our enemies, Chen said. Your governments were the problem, not your people. The Galactic Federation needs every intelligent species to reach its full potential. That includes yours. She stood up and walked to another display, this one showing economic and social data. In the past 2 years, we have eliminated poverty on over 300 worlds. We have shared advanced technology with species that the Council kept primitive for political reasons. We have opened trade routes that your Council kept closed to maintain their monopolies. The data was impressive. Worlds that had been struggling under Council rule were now prosperous. Species that had been kept dependent were developing their own advanced technologies. The galaxy was more peaceful and productive than it had been in centuries. How? Zethkri asked. How did you accomplish so much so quickly? By treating people as partners instead of subjects, Chen replied. Your Council ruled through fear and scarcity. We lead through cooperation and abundance. It turns out that most species prefer the second option. Zethkri thought about this for a long moment. The Council had always assumed that different species needed to be kept separate and controlled to prevent chaos. But the evidence in front of him suggested the opposite was true. What happens to me if I agree to your terms? He asked. You go home and convince your remaining leaders to surrender peacefully, Chen said. Then you help us transition your systems into the Federation. Your experience and knowledge will be valuable in making sure the integration goes smoothly. And if I refuse? Chen's expression became serious again. Then we finish this war the hard way. Your remaining worlds will be conquered by force. Many more people will die unnecessarily, and in the end the result will be exactly the same. Zethkri understood. This was not really a negotiation. It was Admiral Chen explaining how the Council's surrender would work. The alternative was not continued war. It was the complete destruction of everything the Council had built. I need to contact my government, Zethkri said. Of course, use whatever communication methods you prefer. Take as much time as you need. But Zethkri already knew what his answer would be. The Council was finished. Had been finished probably before this war even started. The humans had simply made the reality visible to everyone. 3 days later, Nexus Prime announced the Council's unconditional surrender. The remaining Council fleet stood down. The great fortress systems opened their defenses. The 3,000-year reign of the Galactic Council ended not with a massive battle, but with a simple announcement. 5 years after the surrender, Zethkri stood in his new office on the Federation Council station. He was now the Veltar representative to the Galactic Federation, helping to govern a civilization that spanned most of the known galaxy. It was strange how much had changed. The Federation Council looked similar to the old Galactic Council chamber, but it felt completely different. Representatives from over 400 species worked together to solve problems and plan for the future. There was still disagreement and debate, but it was productive rather than destructive. Through his office window, Zethkri could see human ships patrolling the space lanes. They were different ships now, still powerful but designed more for exploration and protection than pure warfare. The humans had kept their promise. Once their enemies surrendered, they had become protectors rather than conquerors. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still problems to solve, conflicts to resolve, and challenges to overcome. But for the first time in his long life, Zethkri felt optimistic about the future. The humans had done something that Zethkri had thought was impossible. They had united the galaxy not through force or fear, but through hope. They had shown that different species could work together as equals instead of rulers and subjects. And they had done it all in less than 5 years. Zethkri smiled as he returned to his work. The old Galactic Council had ruled for 3,000 years by keeping everyone weak and divided. The new Galactic Federation would probably last much longer by making everyone strong and united. The humans had taught the galaxy a simple but powerful lesson. Cooperation was stronger than domination. It was a lesson that Zethkri hoped would never be forgotten.